On today's Hashi, I'm discussing CFA's suggestions to home buyers and to sellers, Ivy Zelman's prediction for an upcoming shift, and the quarter two report on household debt and credit, as well as an update on mortgage application data. Today is Wednesday, August 7th, 2024. I am Byron Lazine, and the Hot Sheet starts now. Welcome into the Hot Sheet here today. Let me know in the live chat which market you are tuning in from. It's the only show, of course, on the internet that does a 24-hour look back on the housing market. Hit that thumbs up. It's how this video can reach more people who are interested in upping their game in the real estate market, the real estate industry, whatever their connection may be. Also subscribe to the channel down below here on the YouTube channel at Now Bam. We do this show every Monday through Thursday that the markets are open 9:30 on the East Coast, 6:30 on the West Coast. If you want to listen to the replay on audio, go to Spotify or Apple or wherever you listen to your podcast, and we post the replay after the live each and every single day, if that's a better option for you. All right. CFA is putting out some options for buyers and for sellers. It's the Consumer Federation of America. They just released another press release regarding the NAR settlement. Okay, so we're going to go through that and what their recommendations are for sellers and for buyers. They've been very vocal about the settlement. They've been very vocal about changes. They've been very vocal on their belief on where the market or where the consumers should fit into the market, how they should respond to these changes. They've been extremely vocal on that, some of which I've actually agreed with. If you check out some of the Real Word podcasts, I've agreed with some of CFA's analysis. There's other analysis I just haven't agreed with. They have had a major miss, okay? You could argue that the CFA, their tone on agents is that they just don't like them. They don't feel that agents should have a place in the business. I mean, that's one way to read into everything CFA has done. We know that's not true. We know that consumers overwhelmingly want an agent. 93% of them want an agent, whether it's on the buy side or the list side. Consumers want to have the service of a professional guiding them through their real estate transaction, making sure and ensuring that they're doing the right thing, that they're getting the information, that we, the professional, are closing the knowledge gap. That's what this show is all about, helping professionals help consumers close that knowledge gap on the micro and the macro. This obviously deals with the macro. You're the expert in the micro. Ivy Zelman, who we're going to get to here in a minute, on her prediction for an upcoming shift in the real estate market, she once said that if an agent doesn't have a full understanding of both the macro and the micro, they're not a complete agent. I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what she said. I'll bring up the exact, I have it saved. It's inside of BAMX as well. We put so much of this data inside of BAMX. We put our charts inside of BAMX every single day. Of course, you can use code HOT to gain access to BAMX. But I put some of my favorite ones here. And here it is. This is actually a tweet from Steve Harney quoting Ivy Zelman. We would never suggest that a real estate company could be successful without fully understanding local market trends, but ignoring macro trends, what we deal with here on the Hot Sheet every single day, or assuming that they do not carry the same weight would be an equally erroneous suggestion. In our experience, the most effective industry leaders, you, agents of change, watching right now, appreciate the appropriate balance between the two ends of the spectrum. The late, great Steve Harney, quoting in a tweet, Ivy Zelman, Hall of Fame institutional investor, equity analyst. We're going to get to Ivy's thoughts currently on what the biggest shift upcoming could be in the real estate market. But again, digressing back now to this CFA report, this Consumer Federation of America press release yesterday. Okay, They don't feel the same way Ivy does about the professional agent, the agent of change, the industry leader who's looking at the macro and the micro, who's closing the knowledge gap. They just don't feel that way. Okay. And they put out a press release yesterday. Stephen Brobeck, the senior fellow of Consumer Federation of America, put out a consumer alert: how home buyers and sellers can cope with new real estate broker rules and practices. How they can cope, not like how they can operate, how they can strategize in their next transaction, but how they can cope, as if they are in remorse or some type of situation where they're gone through a tragedy. Okay, how can they cope with these changes as a consumer? Obviously, August 17th is coming up in 10 days. Hopefully, you have a plan for that. All realtors must conform to new rules agreed by NAR on their settlement of class action litigation. Two rule changes are particularly important. First, sellers will no longer be required to compensate buyer agents. See, this is when I say, hey, there are some things I thought Consumer Federation over the last few months have made good points on. I've pointed those out on the Real Word podcast here on the main YouTube channel and where you find all your podcast audio. And then I've beat them up on things that are just this dumb. This is just dumb. No longer be required to compensate buyer agents. They weren't required to compensate buyer agents before Consumer Federation of America. I mean, if you guys are going to be fancy enough to call yourself senior fellows, be smart enough to get the information accurate. Second, buyers will be required to sign contracts to set the amount of compensation that buyers will owe their agents. So buyers have this say in obviously what the compensation is going to be. I think buyers would agree that's a good thing. Buyers have a say, have a right to be a part of the conversation of what the compensation is going to be for their representative, the agent that they're hiring. Okay. These rules provide opportunities and risks for consumers, says Stephen Brobeck, a CFA senior fellow. I agree. Some of the risks that I've highlighted would be that all of this compensation between what a seller wants to offer a buyer, broker, or what have you is now removed from the MLS. I'm in the camp of like everybody, the camp that Zillow campaigns for and Realtor.com campaigns for and Agents of Change campaign for and the great brokers across the country campaign for, which is more transparency for consumers, not less, not information that's hard to find, figure out. No, I'm in the camp of more transparency. So I agree with Stephen Brobeck that there's more risks for consumers after the settlement than there was before. But he's not talking about the same thing I'm talking about. He goes on to say knowledgeable home buyers and sellers will be able to take advantage of the opportunities and avoid the risks. That's always true. If you're doing your job as a representative in your community, as an agent of change, as a knowledge broker, somebody willing to close that knowledge gap, taking the resources you get here with our show notes every single day on the hot sheet, all the stuff we upload into BAMX, if you're taking all of that and educating people each and every single day, then you're going to help people avoid the risks and take advantage of the opportunities. Every system has an opportunity. Every system has an advantage for the really smart consumers that are working with great agents, okay? But here are CFA's suggestions to home sellers and to buyers and how to cope with new residential real estate marketplace. Suggestion 1, selecting a competent, honest agent is more important than ever, especially for buyers, okay? Obviously, I agree with this, okay? For the first time, buyer agents will be required to do this written approval, the buyer representation forms. So is the agent also a broker or associate broker? Associate brokers are required to undergo more training and frequently have more experience than agents. So this one's interesting to me. Okay. That one is very interesting to me. I've often said when people say, hey, Byron, do you have your broker's license? Yeah, I do have my broker's license. And they'll say like, why do you have it? I said, I really don't know. I got it. Like why most people got it, just to have it, to be able to say it's cool. I got the higher, license or whatever. really didn't have, I wasn't starting a brokerage. So I guess I got it as back pocket leverage, to have the option. That's probably more of the business decision of why I have the broker's license. But CFA now, and this is a press release going out to consumers and now telling consumers, hey, you want to work with an associate broker or broker because they are required to undergo more training and they have more experience, right? In a lot of states, you got to wait 2 years or there's some period of time before you get that broker's license. That's an experience. That's an interesting angle that I haven't thought of in the past. That I think is probably relevant in marketing, especially if consumers are reading this and I should be looking for an associate broker, right? So that's an interesting thing. If you have your broker or associate broker, whatever the case may be, might be something of value to market yourself as and explain it in this way. Haven't thought of that. I think that's actually quite interesting. Okay. Has the agent sold many properties recently and have they received favorable reviews from clients? Zillow, Realtor.com, and Homes.com can provide this information about most agents. Blows my mind when I ask an agent, hey, what's your, and they say, I've taken everything off of Zillow. I've taken all my sales off. I'm not letting Zillow, I'm not putting reviews there. I'm like, really? Because like 7 out of 10 buyers are using that platform. And even when they get referred to you, hey, you should use so-and-so, they're going to look you up. They're going to go look you up on these platforms, okay? Because they're going to Google your name, sales, blah, blah, blah. Those are the platforms that are going to pop up. Okay, maybe you've done such a phenomenal job with SEO and website, your website traffic and whatever, okay? And maybe you're running ads and all that's great. But even when they see your stuff, they're going to see underneath it or above it, more likely above, the brands that they're more familiar with. That's Realtor.com, that's Zillow, and it's maybe even Homes at this point with the money that they're spending. And they're going to look there because they feel like that's a third-party source. You can feel however you want about that or about those portals, but the case is that's where the consumer is going to go. So yeah, this is just like good practice. You should obviously do that. Will agents provide contract forms and proposed terms at the outset? Give sellers or buyers adequate opportunity to read and evaluate both and then be willing to discuss them. We're obviously training on this. You should be sending the forms all the time. Okay. So, it blows my mind when somebody says, I went on a list appointment, went well. Well, did you get it signed? No. Well, it didn't go that well. Okay. You got to sit there and have some tea, I guess, but you didn't get a signed form. Next question is like, so you left the form there, right? No. I didn't want to leave the contract there. Well, you got to leave give these contracts. This is literally how you put deals together. Provide as many contracts to as many people interested in learning, close that knowledge gap, have some forms available for these folks. I think that's a great suggestion. Okay, suggestion 2. This is again CFA to consumers. There are suggestions to consumers. Read and evaluate buyer or seller contracts, often called agreements, especially blanks that are filled in. Many contracts are impossible to read and understand. Don't sign them. Feel free to seek advice from an attorney or other independent expert. Okay, this is where the CFA has really been pushing hard. You can go back to articles on nowbam.com when they had a press release on seller agreements. They had a press release on buyer agreements in the last couple months. We recovered those both on the Real Word Pod, where we cover new news in the industry every single week. And they're really pushing for this to have your attorney, their attorney, read those. As an agent, you might be saying, hey, cool. Attorney's going to review. These are written by attorneys. They're going to tell them this is a standard form. We're going to be back in business. Or some attorneys are going to say, hey, since I'm walking you through the form anyways, why don't I just do the deal for you? I'll charge a little bit more, but you'll save money on the commission. That's also going to happen. Okay. That's also going to happen. So my advice is become really proficient on explaining forms and make them easy to understand. Okay. You may have a 1-page form. You may have a 4-page form. You may be, operating with a 10-page form. Okay, the cards that are dealt to you are the cards that are dealt to you. If you are a broker, you can make your form more marketable, easier to understand. You have that ability to go and invest in your own forms. Okay, if you're an agent, a broker associate, as CFA says, then you're probably using the forms that are available through a MLS, a board, or potentially, obviously, more likely broker. Okay. Um, you got to just understand what ones you're dealing with thoroughly. Make it easy to understand, because if every single form they're running to the attorney's going to start pitching that they do the deal. Okay. And you're going to see little attorney businesses pop up that do that. Here are the contract provisions that are especially unfair, according to CFA. A commitment to compensate an agent before the consumer has decided to be a client of that agent. Any blatant commitment to agree to dual agency where one agent works with both seller and buyer. Dual agency can be particularly unfair to sellers who lose loyal representation from their listing agent. Dual agents are not permitted to provide either buyer or seller any information or advice that may harm the other party. Obviously, dual agency, big debate for years in real estate. I do tend to agree that from the seller perspective, you'll lose a whole lot when your agent engages in dual agency. Requiring approval, if they're doing dual agency by the book, that is. Requiring approval of binding arbitration that, if there is a dispute, effectively prohibits a buyer or seller from going to court. Mediation is also restricted, but does not limit legal remedies. Any seller contract that combines listing agent and buyer agent compensation. So they're saying if you're seeing that combined, not separated, red flag. That's what Consumer Federation of America is saying to consumers, okay, in this press release. Suggestion 3, discuss and negotiate commissions and any other compensation in dollar amounts. Okay, so Consumer Federation of America is pushing consumers to go flat dollar amounts as opposed to percentage amounts. Okay. Listen, this one is silly. You talk to an M&A, somebody who does M&A, putting together deals, one company buying another company. They're not doing it in dollar amounts. They have a minimum fee of a point. These are big multi-million dollar deals, hundreds of millions of dollar deals, I should say. And they're doing it off of percentages. Okay. You have a Patrick Mahomes who is operating in the NFL under the salary cap. Everybody knows what he's going to make. He's going to make top dollar. He's going to get paid the max to the cap that the Kansas City Chiefs can pay him. Yet the agent is still getting 10%, not a fixed dollar amount, not 2.5%, 10%. And Patrick Mahomes is going to get the contract with or without the agent. The agent is irrelevant in terms of the Kansas City Chiefs offering Patrick Mahomes the money because he's the greatest quarterback on the planet right now. The agent isn't irrelevant in dealing with all of the friction between player and team, in dealing with all of the extra opportunities that get presented to player, in dealing with being the shield from all the people that want to get to them. Okay? That's what you are for your client. I'm the shield between all these buyer conversations that need to be had before we find the right buyer. All the picking and prodding of my home and my emotional attachment to it, I'm the shield to that. Okay? I'm the shield between you and all of the contractors that are frustrating to track down and get a hold of and make sure they show up on time. The appraiser, the inspector. I'm the person representing you through all of this work that needs to be done, right? Patrick Mahomes can avoid 10% of paying their agent if he wants the side job, if he wants a part-time job on top of being the greatest football player alive today. He could do that on his own. He could spend his weekends doing that, or he could spend his weekends playing golf, hanging out with his wife, counting his millions. He chooses to do that. Most sellers choose to keep their life. Most buyers choose to keep their life continuing to operate the way it is. It's why they have an expert guiding them through. They often make more money when they do that, right? It comes down to a percentage. Consumer Federation of America, don't be silly. There are plenty of businesses working off of a percentage. Okay. If the percentage was too high, consumers wouldn't pay it. If 10% for a sports agent was too high, Patrick Mahomes wouldn't pay it, but he gets value out of it. Okay. The senior fellows over at Consumer Federation of America probably haven't done much business themselves, probably haven't engaged at the level that you are in your business career. Okay. It comes down to, I think James is putting in the chat right now, know your value proposition. It comes down to not only knowing it, right? Obviously, this is great stuff, James. It comes down to your value proposition. It comes down to showcasing it and proving it, doing it over and over and over again. Okay. Jason also saying Bam Mania will be epic. It absolutely will be. If you're interested in joining us in October, the 17th and the 18th, I'll have Haley put in the chat. I saw somebody saying, so glad to be here, Byron and Bobby. Bobby's not here. Haley's running the hot sheet. I don't know what Bobby's doing today, but Haley is here. Haley will throw it in the chat. Bam Mania, October 17th and 18th, Agents of Change coming together circa Las Vegas. The speaker lineup is absolutely unbelievable. She'll put the link in there. You can get information. VIP tickets are running out. We've got VIP experience all day Thursday. You get a bunch of perks on Fridays being part of the VIP. Main event general admission tickets on Friday, bammania.com or the link down below. All right. Maybe Stephen Brobeck, the senior fellow. Look at that. There's his phone number. I should call. We should call Stephen. Maybe we should call him live one day. Remember we used to do some live calls on the hot sheet? Should call Stephen Brobeck. I should call him and see if we can get him on a podcast, at least an interview. I'd love to talk to a senior fellow. Okay, moving on to Ivy Zelman. Ivy Zelman is by many considered the oracle of the real estate industry. I put her quote up on earlier here on the stream. I'll put it up again. I love it that much. This is Steve Harney quoting Ivy Zelman. This is her words. We would never suggest a real estate company could be successful without fully understanding local markets, your market. Of course, you understand those. But ignoring macro trends or assuming they do not carry the same weight would be an equally erroneous suggestion. These macro trends that we cover every single day on the hot sheet is how you separate yourself from the average agent. Okay, how you become an agent of change, how you become the leader in your market, how you show somebody through your knowledge that you're the agent they should be working with. Okay, all the stuff that we talk about is stuff that Ivy Zelman believes in. Now, every time she puts something out, because she was one of like maybe 3 leading up to the great financial crisis and the mortgage collapse, that actually predicted it, that actually called it out, while there was a lot of pundits saying real estate will never have an issue with these, no income loan mortgages. She was one that called it early and in advance. Okay. So I often look for her data and her insights when she shares those. Okay. Ivy Zelman is now predicting that climate change will drive a migration shift from Sunbelt states to cooler Midwestern states due to rising temperatures, extreme weather, and increasing insurance costs, potentially leading to declining property values in the Sunbelt and higher demand in the Midwest. Okay. Interesting. Because she's been somebody who has overwhelmingly stated that the Sunbelt next 10 or 15 years is going to continue to explode. Particularly places like Florida, she could see in 15 years as, boomers are transitioning out, that there could be a glut of inventory. We're already seeing a glut of inventory in Florida right now, highest level it's been in 7 years, higher than pre-pandemic. And properties are getting increasingly harder to move. But the builders have like responded to not just Ivy's analysis of the last, number of years, but other analysis, Texas, Florida, Sunbelt states, Arizona, and they've just been building, particularly there. Now, Ivy Zelman warns that the severe climate change effects like extreme heat and flooding, leading to higher insurance costs and property taxes in the Sunbelt, could lead to a shift to Midwestern states. There's 5 states that Ivy Zelman expects to be the big winners. I've got questions around almost all of them as big winners of migration shift patterns. We've seen huge migration shifts the last 5 years straight. Florida, Carolinas. I'm very bullish on North Carolina continuing to have a huge migration shift into that state. Look up Charlotte. And Haley, if you could bring this chart up, because I can't get the chart up right now on my end. If you could bring this chart up, and so then we could share it from your end. That'd be great. It'll be available for everybody inside of BAMX. Of course, all of the charts in the show notes will be available there. But when I look at these 5 states that Zelman expects to be the big winners, okay, they're just surprising to me. All right, here they are directly out of your hot sheet show notes. If you're in one of these states, I'd be downloading this information from inside of BAMX, and I would be. Oh, there it is, right? I don't know. Take a look at see if that one's it, and then we can bring it up. But if I'm not sure if that one's it or not. I can't see that far. Okay. If I'm in one of these states, I'm using this information from the Ivy Zelman report, and I'm going, headline on email this week. I'm going headline on text message, and promoting that, right? If I'm in a feeder market into one of these, I'm doing, the other angle. Okay. The 5 states Zelman expects to be the big winners: Ohio, Michigan, Illinois, Iowa, and Wisconsin. Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco research supports the likelihood micro trends reversing Sunbelt to cooler, less crowded areas. Okay, but Ohio, Michigan, Illinois, and Iowa points to the fact that these 5 states have cooler, summers. Okay, but doesn't talk about the winters. I'm not sure that the winters are something that a lot of retirees want to deal with in some of those states. Illinois, very high on taxes, becomes one of the hardest states to retire in. There's a chart on National Mover Study. Okay, so this is where we've seen high levels of migration. I mentioned the Carolinas. You got Tennessee, you got Florida, you got Arizona. This is where people are moving to right now. Okay, the outbound states include California, Washington, Illinois on the outbound state. Okay, people leaving there because of the taxes. Now Zelman saying, hey, in the future, not the immediate future, in the long-term future, as the climate risks continue to increase, these are the states that people, Ohio, Michigan, Illinois, Iowa, Wisconsin, be moving into. Okay, it's interesting. I typically find a lot of, I find it easy to agree with a lot of what Ivy Zelman says. This one puzzles me a little bit because of the 5 states that she selected. That's why it puzzles me. Her long-term concerns are the lack of long-term planning among property developers in coastal areas regarding climate change impacts. I would agree with that. A lot of property developers want to just knock out the sales as quickly as they can. Rising temperatures and severe weather are already leading to higher insurance costs and taxes, as well as deteriorating air quality. Okay. As climate change intensifies, Zelman anticipates significant property value declines in Sunbelt and increased interest in Midwestern states. So again, this is long-term, not like 2025. I'm not trying to freak people. I'm just giving you her report. People might seek more affordable and less climate-impacted regions, leading to shifts in housing demand and market dynamics. Some of those particular states, Illinois, brutal winters, very high taxes. want to retire there? I don't know. Maybe you do all your traveling in the winter. I'm not sure if I can get on board with that. All right. We have a quarter two report on household debt and credit. This I'm keeping my eye on very carefully as we have a lot of conversation around the word recession right now. If you were able to catch yesterday's hot sheet, you know what we're talking about. Go back and listen to the last 2 days. The word recession is going to be coming up as a common conversation starter when people talk about the economy. It'll get politicized for sure. We're in an election year. But there are realities that are underlying in a lot of the economic data that could point towards potential recession looming. This is one of them. The total debt balance right here. This is something not talked about enough. You won't hear the incumbent side talking about the total debt being out of control at all. Goes against their case of a strong economy. This shows a weakening economy. Mortgage balances shown on consumer debt credit report increased by 77 million. Not worried about the mortgages because that's stable debt. Home equity line of credits increased by 4 billion, ninth consecutive quarterly increase. And so you got HELOCs increasing, people trying to access their equity. And there's now 380 billion in outstanding balances, 63 above the series low. Credit card balances. This is the one that is concerning. Now standing at $1.14 trillion. The increase was by 27 billion during the second quarter alone, 5.8% above the level a year ago. When we look at what kind of debt is increasing and increasing, pretty rapidly, it's the credit card debt that is of a concern. Okay, household debt and credit developments as of quarter two, 2024. You've got mortgage debt increasing, of course. Again, that is better debt than what ends up on most people's credit cards. Home equity line of credit, the rapid increase there is interesting because people are accessing cash for what? For, whether you're using it or not, but they're accessing it. That's interesting. Student debt, auto debt, 1.626 trillion there. Credit card debt, and then total debt, obviously being up across the board. Quarterly, annual, and total debt as of quarter one is $17.8 trillion. That's for household and credit debt. Here's the flow into serious delinquency, okay, according to this report. You've got mortgage debt up from 0.63% to 0.95%. Very low numbers, historically low numbers, even below healthy level. You could see, over 1% on mortgage debt be fine. Okay. You could get up past that number and still be fine, be normal, be healthy. Home equity line of credit, 0.5%. Student loan debt is down 0.85% to 0.77%. Auto loan debt, serious delinquencies, 90 days or more, 2.4 up to 2.8, 2.9. Credit card debt. This is the number that would be concerning about the future stability of our consumers. 5% to over 7%. Okay. That's the biggest jump. And with how much credit card debt we have in this country, that's the one number that I would be paying attention to, because the state of the consumer, unemployment going up, you lose your job, you have this credit card debt, could run into some issues here. We've got a whole bunch of charts. They'll be available inside of BAMX. If you're interested in some of this stuff, the total debt balance and its compensation here in a bar graph. Number of accounts by loan type. Look at the credit card access up and to the right since 2020, a significant increase since 2020. Mortgage, relatively flat from 2003 to today. Don't see any issues with mortgage. You have an increase in auto loan since the last 10 years, but a decline recently. So credit cards are going through the roof. People are hooked on that money printing that is evaporated, now going out, getting the next best thing, more credit cards. Number of new and closed accounts and inquiries, okay? number of accounts opened in the last 12 months on this is for credit cards. Number of accounts open in the last 12 months is on the decline. Number of accounts closed within 12 months is on the increase. Number of inquiries within 6 months is on the decline. Okay, so maybe some signs of hope there. Here are the mortgage originations by credit score. Okay, you're seeing that very few loan originations in the 620 or the 620 to 659 when you saw a lot of them in 03, 04, 05, 06, 07. Look at the left side of this chart versus the right side. Mortgage originations are not happening with low credit borrowers anywhere near the scale that they happened in 03, 4, 5, 6, 7, even 8, even 9, even 10 when we were weaning off of it. This is one of those charts that you want to show people that think we're getting into 2008, 2007 again, over and over and over. You show them this left side of the chart and you compare it to the right side of the chart. Today's borrower of a mortgage is so much more qualified during that time frame. It's not even a close analysis. It's not a good representation of each other. It's apples to oranges. It's completely different from one another. Here are the credit score at origination. Look at from 03 to today. Much higher. 50% or above 750. You've got to be fully qualified right now to get a mortgage. That's why I say, hey, the credit card debt's concerned, the mortgage debt, not concerned. These are very high qualified people fixing the cost of what their living expense is going to be on their biggest living expense. Okay. The credit card stuff concerns me because what is that debt? Why does it keep going up? Okay. Auto loan originations by credit score. This is where you're going to see, more numbers similar to 04, 05. Look at this. Hey, we're still giving this, same lower credit score on the auto loan like we were back then, but mortgages have changed dramatically. Not even close. The 08 comparisons don't fit. Okay. Here's another example of how credit limit and balance for credit cards are going up. HELOC limit has actually gone down since 05, 06, 07, 08. The HELOC balance has gone down, while credit card balance, credit card limit has gone up. Credit card debt, way more concerning than anything tied to the house. Okay. Total balance by delinquency status. Again, totally different from, we're below the numbers of 06, 07 before the explosion in the great financial crisis. These are the lowest numbers on the chart here since for the last 20 years. There's no signs of, the consumer having issues with the mortgage right now. That's why we want to stay away from a deep recession that would include, and the chances of that are not high. I'm not saying they are, but we want to stay away from deep recession that include people losing their jobs and not being able to pay the mortgage. Percent of balance days delinquent. Look at student loan. They don't, I guess they don't punish people for being delinquent on the student loan. That's more of a government thing that's dropping off down. It's not the students all of a sudden are like, oh, let me just not be delinquent. They're not being penalized for that anymore. Maybe that changes in the future, but that's the case right now. Look at the mortgage. Okay. Mortgage at an all-time low of days delinquent by loan type. So another example that we're not in that situation. All right. I will upload that. All that'll be uploaded into BAMX. Use code HOT to get into BAMX. If you're not there today, we upload new data every single day, as well as on Fridays, our BAMX in the box content done for you, emails, blogs, social media content, okay, as well as video scripts, all uploaded BAMX in a box for you, as well as all of this daily content, our monthly courses, our monthly live streams, and the community. It is by far the best deal in real estate. Nothing even matches it if you're an agent of change. Okay, what has changed this week is some interest in mortgage applications. According to Mortgage Banker Association, the seasonally adjusted mortgage purchase index increased 1% from 1 week earlier. Obviously, we saw a huge drop in the interest rate, and it has now spurred a more interest and more demand. up 1% from a week earlier. Okay. Still down 11% from 1 year ago. So overall, less demand than a year ago. But the rate decreases across the board spurred more of that activity. I said on Monday, I said on yesterday, I said Monday and Tuesday, I said, get out there and let everybody in your database know that's been sitting on the sideline that this could be a moment in time. And look, that moment in time didn't last very long. 10-year Treasury now reapproaching 4% here today as we start the day. Obviously, this could change. Look at the the erasing of this low 3.75 10-year that we seen just a day ago, a couple of days ago. Obviously now getting back into 4%. And when yesterday it was up to 3.8, I said, hey, we're not going to have the 30-year fix go down. Unfortunately, it's going to go back up. And unfortunately, it did. It's why it's so important to get out in front of those conversations and make sure that you're able to educate these buyers, because it's a moment in time. Okay. Yesterday, we saw it go up to 6.52. We've seen these dramatic swings enough in the last 2 years to know that the rate could go up 0.25% in a day. For the buyers who locked in on Friday at 6.4, Monday at 6.34, maybe even better due to their credit, they're happy with that. 6.52. I'm not saying they're not happy. I'm just saying there was an opportunity there to really get that information out, be the educator on that. And I hope most of you guys had those conversations with the people in your database who have been sitting on the sidelines. 6.52 yesterday. I expect this number to go up today, looking at the 10-year. Okay, so we had that little burst. Now, listen, all the uncertainty coming into Monday on the Middle East uncertainty and all that stuff breaks out. You might see these things drop. I'm not rooting for that. I'm just saying the reality of some of the uncertainty going around the world does cause this number to go down. So that kind of hasn't happened. We're 3 days away. What is happening over there? Nobody knows. What is going to happen? Nobody knows. Ultimately, I said this yesterday, if you're really rooting for low 5% rates, you're rooting for something bad to happen, either globally or with a recession here and a lot of people losing their jobs. So those moments of time where there's fear in the market and that rate reacts, that's where you want to take advantage and make sure you're educating the buyers. Hey, like if you're waiting for fives, you're waiting for catastrophe. But when we get 6.25 on some fear, let's go take advantage and lock in. Okay. All right. There we go. There's your hot sheet for today. Much longer than normal, but we had a lot to go through. Apologize for that. Certainly share this with somebody who could benefit on a 24-hour look back on housing. Again, if you like the replays audio, we have it Apple and Spotify. Love that you're here with me on the live YouTube. Make sure that you hit the thumbs up so more people can get access to this video. That's how the deal works on YouTube. And subscribe to this channel for all of our content that comes out every single week here on BAM. Appreciate all of you. Have a great day. Until next time, of course, toodaloo.